We are delighted you chose to be with us tonight. We want you to have a safe and wonderful experience. Please be assured that your safety as well as your enjoyment of the event are our utmost concern. Please take a moment, look around, and identify the nearest two exits. Whether in a virtual setting at your home or physically in some form of venue, you must always be ready. So please identify two exits in your current location in the event it is necessary to evacuate quickly and orderly. Also, during this COVID-19 pandemic, please remember to wear your mask, wash your hands, and always stand 6 feet apart from others. Please enjoy the event and continue to be safe.
I am Helen Settles. I am the Civic Engagement Chairperson for the Staten Island branch of the NAACP. So it's important that the public know what you are going to do for them if you become the mayor of the city of New York. I'm also the moderator, besides giving you the welcome. We're hoping that you will be able to enlighten us. You will have a 2-minute opening, 90 seconds to answer the questions, and a 1-minute closing. I just want to give you a quick, let you know the different organizations besides the NAACP that's supporting this coalition of Black Staten Island-led community groups, and that's at the CASI, which is the African Community Alliance of Staten Island, the Empowerment Zone, Fatherhood Matter, the Harriet Tubman Purple Hat Society, Hidden Pearls of Staten Island, Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated, Lambda Kappa Mu Sorority, Lambda Chapter, Staten Island National Council of Negro Women, Staten Island Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Staten Island Black Heritage, Staten Island Liberian Community, and Youth Bill at Central Family Life Center, besides the NAACP. So these are all the groups that are on here tonight watching what you have to say. Could you just give us a quick opening statement as to how you see yourself as the mayor and what you want to do for the city?
Well, I saw the first 2 months on the campaign trail that there was a difference on what I wanted to do and others. Many people wanted to be heard. I wanted to be felt. I wanted New Yorkers to feel that I lived the life that they live. I could talk about what it is to be a low-skill employee because I was a dishwasher as a child. I could talk about what it is to live on the verge of homelessness because, as I indicated, we saw and experienced that every day as a child. I could talk about over police abusive behavior because I was arrested and beat by police officers. But I also know what it is to lose a loved one to gun violence. I lost a childhood friend during the gang wars during the time that I was a child. And I also can tell you the difficulties of trying to get your degree. I went to school at night. It took me 14 years to get my bachelor's and my master's degree. I know what it is to struggle in this city and also know how the city has betrayed us. Cities are made up of agencies. And if our agencies are not producing and delivering the goods and services to our city, we'll never turn the city around. I'm going to make sure my agencies do its job like taxpayers are doing their job. And this is a great moment for us to finally have our city function in the way that we deserve it to function in. We betrayed New Yorkers. That betrayal stopped on January 1st if I'm elected to be the mayor of the city.
Flores, you have a 2-minute opening statement.
So thank you for having me. My name is Raja Flores. I'm a surgeon, and I'm also chairman of one of the leading thoracic surgery departments in the world. I'm also a New Yorker. I was born and raised in this city. I grew up poor with a single mom who worked as a secretary, and we relied on affordable housing to survive. Programs like the Children's Aid Society, Higher Education Opportunity Program, CYO-PAL, gave me the guidance and the male role models that I needed to get an education. I've always given back to help the advancement of underrepresented minorities. It started in high school with the Higher Achievement Program and continued throughout my education. I've even started programs like the Summer Exposure Program for inner city high school students at Sloan Kettering, and participated in countless other programs like Bronx Hope to give back, because I was helped in a big, big way. I want young kids to look at me and see themselves differently, where they can say, here was this poor Hispanic kid from a broken home. If he could do it, then so could I. Today, I take care of many patients in East Harlem who live in similar conditions like me and my mom did. Many are exposed to asbestos, to lead, to mold in their public housing. I've had to remove half of people's lungs because of their living conditions. People who pay rent, not asking for a handout. They showed up every day to work when COVID hit. And every day that passes, they get more and more sick from their living conditions. And a surgeon can't fix this, but a government for the people can. And that's why I'm running for mayor of New York City.
Thank you, Mr. Flores. Ms. Prussman, could you give your opening statement?
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here. My name is Stacey Prussman. I'm a born and raised Brooklynite. I came from a lower middle income home. I struggled a lot growing up with mental health issues. I survived those mental health issues. I strongly believe that as mayor, I can bring my experiences in running businesses, being a public speaker, an activist into the communities. I believe right now our city is overrun with sadness, with despair. We are now facing unprecedented times with climate change, COVID issues, and I believe we need to come through it with hope and an inspiration. And one of my passions is affordable housing for people throughout the city. People with a full-time job should not have to suffer and for sustainable housing in New York City. People that had worked through the pandemic, people that have been working their butts off are struggling to pay rent, even with a job. And with my EBI plan and my tax plan, I plan to help those people. I also believe that we need to change our education where we have more school choice. So our students are excited to learn and not go to school and feel like they're being incarcerated, which I've been in the schools doing speaking and actually teaching students. And I see the environment in the school system now, and it needs to change if we want a city that's functional and happy without crime. We also need to build the bridges with our social justice system and our criminal justice system, so we never have another Breonna Taylor or George Floyd situation ever again. We need to reform how we do our police system. We also need to bring back CUNY and fund that again, and I have a plan for that as well. And I want to stop our systemic and our also antiquated zoning laws that aren't friendly to racism or climate change. So that's a little bit about me, and I hope that we can have a great time today.
Next is Catherine Rojas. Your opening statement, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Cathy Rojas. I'm a Queens native. I'm a daughter of 2 Colombian immigrants. I'm a New York City public school graduate. I went to New York City public schools from K through 12, and I went to SUNY and CUNY for my bachelor's and master's degree. I come from a working class family. My mother is a housekeeper. My father's an auto body painter. I've worked in the restaurant industry as a server. I've worked as a tenant organizer, and now I work as a high school history teacher with the Department of Education. Like most New Yorkers, I've also struggled under this capitalist system. I've worried about facing evictions and foreclosure. I've had to work and still have to work more than 40 hours just to make ends meet. I've been a victim to police violence, and I've witnessed ICE violence in my community. And I've been in my community defending people who are victims to police violence through Cop Watch, through my activism with the Justice Committee, through my protesting. And I'm someone unafraid to take action against all forms of injustice. For years, I've been on the front lines for a decade, over a decade now, with working in oppressed communities, fighting to build a city where our economy is centered on the needs of working class people instead of the tiny, wealthy, and greedy minority. And that's why I'm running for New York City mayor under a socialist platform to fight for what our community deserves. Together, we can definitely rebuild and transform this city if we continue to put the interests of humanity over the interests of the rich.
Thank you, Kathy. And last, we have Quanda Francis.
All right, so hello everyone. So my name is Quanda Francis. I am born and raised in New York City, running for mayor, and I've overcome tremendous adversity, and that is one of the main reasons why I decided to run for mayor. I lived experience in terms of being a teenage mom, experiencing homelessness, and now seeing that 20 years later, not much has changed in terms of output in terms of services, and just that, overall supportive system that, young women need to push in terms of upward mobility.
Okay, great. Thank you. So Quanda, we actually start the first question with you. If elected to mayor, how will your administration ensure that subsidized and low income housing is quality housing and not just housing of the last resort?
Well, first we'll look at the data. As a data scientist, it's very important to implement data-driven public policies. And, in terms of housing, it's important to have housing that's affordable. And it is very important in terms of ensuring that while housing is affordable, that we are creating an environment where individuals are able to take advantage of the community that they live in terms of, ensuring that the schools are meet the needs of the children, if they are, in fact, parents. And just, again, ensuring that we are placing individuals in the community that is going to be welcoming for them and that is going to support them in terms of upward mobility.
Okay, thank you. Kathy Rojas, the same question, please.
Yes, so we want to make sure that New York City becomes a rent control city. And by that, we mean that landlords would not be able to charge more than 20% of household income. In that way, we automatically ensure that housing is affordable to every single New Yorker, because everybody will be able to afford 20% of their income. On top of that, we know that there's more people, more families living in homeless shelters than there are vacant apartments in New York City. Therefore, we want to seize vacant and warehouse properties and create them and make sure they become permanent, affordable housing. We are in support of fully funding NYCHA, and the way that we plan to do that is by taxing the rich. New York City has the most amount of millionaires and billionaires than any other city in the country. We know that workers, that we, the New York working class, has created that wealth for them. And therefore, we know that we can tax them and have enough income to fix the infrastructure of NYCHA in order to ensure that everybody has quality housing.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Stacey Prussman.
Hi, that's a great question, because quality housing comes in all shapes and sizes. First of all, basic people with basic income that live in a normal rental, sometimes that housing isn't quality. So we need to make sure landlords uphold the rules of creating homes that don't have rats or mice or lead or mold. That's number one. Now we go into NYCHA. I want to create a rent-to-own situation where people in NYCHA are owning the properties they live in. I think that's very important. Land ownership is a way to freedom. Second of all, I want to create our affordable housing program needs to expand. Mitchell Lama, for instance, did a very good job in keeping people in their homes through thick and thin. So I think we need to go back to programs that worked and take away programs that don't work. We have plenty of housing right now. Changing zoning, for instance, as I said before, would make a big difference, because all these office buildings that people are never coming back to, we can now create places where people can live in those places. Also, people that are homeless. We've let this problem go since at least my lifetime. We treat the homeless like they're not human beings. They're human beings with all different situations, from mental illness to people bad on their luck to people with drug addiction. We need to treat the systemic issue of why people are homeless, and also put people in permanent homes. Shelters work for a night, but not for a lifetime. We need to create permanent homes for families. And that is the only way to end homelessness permanently in the city. And I believe right now that we have the power to do so.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Stacey. Okay, and next we have Raja Flores, please.
So this is the reason I'm running for mayor. It's because as a surgeon in East Harlem, I saw how unsafe housing hurts people, where I've had to take them to the operating room because they have fungus growing out of their lungs, where I've had to take out cancers from asbestos and from secondhand smoke. I can only take care of one patient at a time in the hospital. And what I realize is that the politicians have a lot of power in their hands to take care of a huge number of people, but they don't do it. They're too busy asking for money. They're too busy fundraising. And what we need to do is to have people that are focused on the people who are suffering every day from where they're living. These are the people that fought for COVID. They came to the hospitals every day. They're the essential workers. Half of the essential workers that work in the hospitals live in NYCHA, and they're not, and they pay rent, like I said before. And what's happening is that there is a 6 times higher rate of death in the Far Rockaway NYCHA section of the Rockaways than the non-Far Rockaway section. So it's killing people. And as a doctor, you make your rounds on your sickest patient. As mayor, I would go around from 8 to 10 every morning, go to a couple NYCHA complexes and hit the entire NYCHA complex from place to place and make sure that the repairs are taken over and are fixed in a timely way with hands on. You can't do this from behind a desk. And I needed that type of housing when I was growing up to buy books. You can't spend all your money on housing. And the only way I got to get an education is because we had cheap rent, where my mom, working as a secretary, could buy me the books that I needed.
Okay, thank you very much. Eric, the same question, please.
It's imperative that all of us should have the right to low income and middle income. Sometimes we forget about middle income New Yorkers, particularly after we were successful in increasing the $15 minimum wage. That put a lot of family members into middle income status, and some of them are not qualified for the low income housing. So we need to focus on low income and middle income housing, which is crucial. And I know what it's like to have housing insecurity growing up in South Jamaica, Queens, carrying a garbage bag to school every day, thinking we were going to be thrown out and have to go to a shelter. And so this is of paramount importance to me. Number one, we rolled out our plan for hotel conversion in outer boroughs for those hotels that are empty right now, to purchase them and turn them into housing. My first apartment was a kitchenette. It was small, but I loved it. It allowed me to eventually get a co-op and eventually buy a multifamily house that paid my son's college tuition. So having that step process for those in a low-income categories is crucial. Then we need to upzone in affluent communities. We have traditionally upzoned in poorer communities and displaced long-term tenants. I think we need to upzone in those sacred cows areas where we have not upzoned before. This would help diversify schools, access to healthy food, access to great transportation. And we must think differently about ensuring HRA, HPD, DOB, all of these agencies must be aligned together to not only build housing based on the numbers, but the right type of housing. That's what we are failing to do. And I'm going to lean into building supportive housing to make sure that people who need the supportive services receive them at the same time. And you could have the quality housing that's needed in this city. And lastly, NYCHA. I'm a believer in infill building, where the new buildings that are built on NYCHA land will go to longstanding tenants that want to downsize. Many longstanding tenants would like to downsize from their 3-bedroom apartments, but they're afraid if they do so, they will be moved out of their communities. Let's allow the new tenants, the older tenants, to move into the new units and bring in new families after renovating the older units. So we need to think differently about housing, and that is what I'm going to do, but I'm teaming with the partners in this area to make sure we get it right.
Very good, thank you. Okay, the second question is, the recent murders of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd began the much needed discussion about systemic racism. So the organizations that came together and in the community, Black and Brown and Indigenous and Asian communities, is often punished at a much harsher penalty than our white counterparts for the same infraction. This is very evident in our educational system and criminal justice system. What are you prepared to do as our next mayor to tackle this issue?
So, you know, when the George Floyd demonstrations were going on, I sat with my entire office, about 80 people, and I asked them, what did they feel about the whole situation? And the majority are women, the majority were Black and Hispanic, and they talked about their fear for their children. And this is not new. The only thing new is now things are being recorded. But in my time when I was growing up in this city, the Central Park jogger case, you had 5 innocent Black and Latino kids that went to jail who were DNA proven innocent. And I think we got to be careful. If we go too far the other way with the police, the people that are going to get hurt are the Black and the Hispanic communities. You need a strong police presence, but it needs to be done equally. And so you have to make sure that whoever is mayor cannot be a cop, because there's too many connections with the police community. It's like in the US Constitution, there's a system of checks and balances. Especially in the environment we have here, the next mayor needs to be a civilian so that they can look and see what's happening in the police department and give a civilian's perspective. If you have a cop as mayor, that takes away that system of checks and balances, no matter how much they talk the talk.
All right, thank you.
Stacey,
same question.
The George Floyd and Breonna Taylor situation should never have happened, but we hope we can learn from these horrible things that happen. I want to end qualified immunity. I want to reform our police department 100%. They should be processing rape cases and solving murders, not bothering people for minor infractions. And that's how these things escalate. We need to de-escalate situations. We need to have mental health counselors in situations with the police that are de-escalating, not shooting at people. It's not the way to our city belongs to be. Our city is a place where people come to thrive and learn and grow, not a place where they feel that the police are chasing them. Police activity is something that happens after the crime. We need to prevent crimes through education, through mental health counseling, through housing stability and food stability. Happy people don't commit crimes. So my plan is to totally reform the police and how they do policing, retrain the police, make sure that people are properly policed in the way that their reactionary time to a crime is there. So when God forbid gets shot or they get run over by a car, the police are there. They don't have to wait 2 hours. The ambulance is there. If it's domestic violence, we have a mental health counselor ready to go. We need to start treating people like criminals before they're arrested and treat people like civilians. And that's how I will police this city. Strong, but very, very fair.
Thank you, Stacey. Next we have Kathy. Same question.
Thank you very much. So we need to really look, I grew up in New York City, and I see, but and now I'm a high school teacher. I'm responsible for hundreds of youth every single year. And I fear for their lives many times, right? But I fear for two reasons. One is the common everyday violence, but two is the police violence that every day my students are experiencing, especially in a community that is predominantly immigrant. We see how many times youth disappear or could be deported because of their contact with police, right? So we really need to look at what actually works at reducing crime. And when we look at how effective police are, right, we see that only 2% of major crimes are actually solved by police. 2% of major crimes. And this is by a study done at the university at Utah College. And we know that if they really were truly trying to solve crime, minimize crime, and the war on drugs, whatever it is that they say that they're doing, why aren't they arresting the true criminals, right? The Wall Street bankers, the corporate thieves, the Sackler family that caused the death of over 200,000 community members, right? And we need to really take it back and look at what was this criminal justice system. And I'm a history teacher, right? So we need to look at it historically. What was the purpose of the criminal justice system? And the purpose was to re-incarcerate people. So we want to look at what works. So we want to promote violence intervention programs, which have had a 63% reduction in shootings in the South Bronx. And they encompass conflict mediation, mentorship, homeownership, job readiness.
Thank you. Okay, we have to, I'm sorry. It was very good. So maybe in your closing, you can continue. Next, we have Quanda Francis.
So when I joined the New York City Police Department as a crime analyst, my goal was to help the department so sort of implement policies that allow them to see how individuals from marginalized communities view the police department and their tactics. And bringing me to this moment where I had to sue the police department for racial and gender discrimination, we have to reform this system from the top down. If we continue to elect individuals that are going to appoint individuals that are going to continue the same systemic processes, we're going to continue to have George Floyd and Breonna Taylor situations. Again, as someone that is working and pursuing a PhD, as a researcher, I look at things differently. And looking at the data and working in intel and seeing how the police department puts together their cases, and just, again, being someone that grew up in a marginalized community that was over-policed, I see things from multiple viewpoints. And as mayor, New York City will have the most transformative transformation in terms of government that the city has ever seen in our history. And again, why? Because of my lived experiences, because of the fact that I'm a researcher and look at things objectively, and based on my professional background as an accountant and as the data scientist, look at things from multiple standpoints. And I understand that in order to build trust within the community, we need to understand the breakdowns in the police department in terms of how they view the community, and the community in terms of how they view the police department.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Eric, the same question, please.
We must lean into making sure that, number one, we have our police officers back to do their job correctly. But number two, make sure we send a strong message to those that don't understand that public safety is a noble profession. It's taking far too long to get rid of those officers who are abusive. We saw the 4 years it took to get rid of Pantaleo, who killed Eric Gardner. That's unacceptable. We're going to have an expeditious but fair trial system to move out abusive officers from our New York City Police Department. But we're also going to diversify the department. I'm going to allow those men and women who are part of the hospital police, school safety agents, HPD, all of these different law enforcement entities. I'm going to allow them after 2 years to be promoted into the police department. Why is that important? Because over 85% of them are Black and brown, a substantial number of them are women, and they're 100% of New Yorkers. They are going to come from our communities. That is crucial to start setting the right tone of what we want in our police department. And then we're going to build a new ecosystem of public safety, partner with our crisis management team, our clergy groups, our various youth organizations and groups to build a new communication and trust between police and communities. That is how we can get the safety that we need with the justice that we deserve. And I believe it's going to be a new day in policing and public safety when we change how we think about public safety in our city. Lastly, public safety is not only the things that we must do right now, but it's the things we need to do in the long term. We need to look at what is feeding our criminal justice system. 30% of our inmates, according to one report, are dyslexic in this country. 55% of Rikers inmates have learning disabilities. 80% don't have a high school diploma or an equivalency. So I want to prevent the crime, not only close Rikers Island, I want to close the pipeline that feeds Rikers Island. And this way we can realize we can live in a safe environment that we deserve.
The next question is, what is your plan to save small businesses? How do we make sure when we come back from COVID that our local businesses are still here? Will you continue and expand the Black Entrepreneur New York City initiative?
So I have very broad-based support in the small business community. I worked for the Small Business Administration for 4 years. I helped us recover. Thousands of small business owners reached out to me and during COVID, and because there were businesses that were in crisis, and because we had a Small Business Administration that on the surface meant well, but in terms of implementing the rollout of the government's assistance program, it just was not streamlined. So a raw assessment, right? Determining what small business owners need, because every small business owner and their business is different. So we need to get back to the basis of looking at the data and understanding how to be intentional in terms of helping small business owners. And again, I will be a mayor that implements, implements data-driven public policies. And again, it's very important to look at the data and do an assessment and understand the unique barriers that small business owners will have in terms of scaling or just expanding and meeting them where they are.
Thank you. Next, Catherine Rojas, same question, please.
Yes, so through COVID-19, we saw specifically how many small businesses had to close because they had no, no option. I mean, the small business relief that was given out, a lot of it was being taken advantage by big corporations. A lot of small businesses and mom and pops, they didn't know how to apply. I personally helped people apply, but our platform is committed to giving small businesses $10,000 in aid to help them recover from the COVID-19 crisis and to help them unionize their workers, because we do believe that all workers have a right to a union, and that if all workers are unionized, then New York City as a whole will be able to have better job conditions, a livable wage, and an all around better life. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Stacey?
Well, small businesses, there's so many different types. We have the hospitality businesses, the arts, to restaurants, to small cafes, to a boutique. They all have different needs. Also, we have a big issue with vending licenses. I want to end vending license expenses because I think that hurts our people from expanding and having a business. A vendor is a business, small business, essentially. We are in a gig economy. We have to embrace that. We need to figure out what the issues are for each business. Every business has different issues. So I'd like to reduce our sales tax for small businesses, from remove it for a year for all small businesses in New York City on the city level. I think that would help them get going and people coming into the city and using small businesses. Also zoning issues where people could open stores where they once weren't able to open stores. I think that's going to help a lot as well. I want to create a small business association where we create a committee where we can help a small business by getting their specific needs addressed and helping them succeed. I think sometimes lack of education and how to create more income is a way by mentorships with other people. I think that's a great way to do it. Have a mentorship situation going on with small businesses. I mean, we have to look at each small business differently. We can't put it all in one clump because there's so many different types of small business. So I think as we address each situation, zoning, reforming, professional licensing. If you could braid hair, I don't think you need a license, but I think you just tell people I don't have a license, but I braid hair. I mean, the things like that. And those hairdressers spend a lot of money for their licenses. So we need to really redo how we do business and make it affordable for anybody. Thank you.
Thank you. And Raja Flores, please.
It's all about supporting the MWBE program. I think you got to decrease taxes. You've got to increase the accessibility to loans, and you've got to increase the opportunities for education to learn how to manage these. I think many new business owners need to know how to balance a budget, all the basic things of running a business. My biggest business plan has to do with NYCHA business. Whenever you look at NYCHA, let's say in Staten Island, the Berry Houses, or Queensbridge, or Wagner in East Harlem, what do you notice on the first floor of NYCHA complexes? Nothing. There's nothing there. NYCHA people have to buy eggs. They have to buy milk. They have to buy bread. Why do they have to take their money and put it someplace else? Create businesses within the bottom of NYCHA complexes that are run by the tenants that you put your own money into so that it can support the buildings that they live in. And that would be my focus of businesses, especially within the realm of the MWBE program.
Oh, thank you. The third question, Eric. Staten Island was greatly impacted by the effects of Hurricane Henri and Ida. How will you tackle and address the issue of climate change? Are there any green energy projects you will pursue if elected as our next mayor?
Yeah, the first thing we must do, we must be honest with ourselves. Listen, we screwed up the planet. We didn't do it in 1 week. We didn't do it in one storm. We did it over generations after generation. And anyone that comes in front of you and state we can build out our sewer systems, we can change the climate issues that we're having and build out our infrastructure in a year, 2 years, they're lying. We're not. It's going to take 20 to 30 years to rebuild our sewer systems. It's going to take years to build our coastal areas the way this ought to be. And it's going to take billions of dollars. But what we must do is have a plan that's prevention and intervention, a term I use all the time. Prevention are the long-term plans of any new sewer project should be built to sustain a 100-year storm. We need to build for the future, not for now. We need to put a pause on all of these projects that are taking place now and stated these new projects cannot be built for what the past storms were like, but what the future storms are going to be like. Then we need to look at using natural ways that nature keeps water out by making sure we build that into our resiliency plan. But we also have to do things right now. We need an early warning system when there's a flood taking place. It could be everything from a siren to using technology to notify people on their phone. We need to map out those areas that historically have flooding problems so we can let people know so we are not seeing New Yorkers die in their basements. And then we need to come up with a real number or color-coded system the way we do terrorism. So all agencies know when to respond and how to respond when there's a particular storm. From a color red to yellow to green, it will let them know automatically the type of storm that's about to hit the city and what they should do, how we should close highways, how we should notify people, everything that we need to do to be not just reactive.
Well, thank you all for those inspiring words. So we're going to start with you, Raja, to do your 1 minute closing, please.
So thank you for having me. You know, we just had an election for mayor, but I couldn't vote. The Democrat one with 7% of registered voters and the Republican one with less than 1%. Myself and a million other independent New Yorkers were disenfranchised. And that's not by chance. Closed primaries started after the Civil War to prevent Black Americans from voting. Today, Democrat and Republican politicians continue to make backroom deals with each other to control the elections so they stay in power. And this political industry gets paid big time with taxpayer money. So I would ask everybody out there in the population of New York City to resist manipulation by the corrupt political parties, because the people running in them are just the figureheads. There's a corrupt party behind them. Do your own homework on each of us. There's more than two choices. And that's the only way that we, the people, can actually reclaim our constitutional rights. And that's by voting differently.
Thank you, Roger. Okay, Stacey?
Hi, on November 2nd, we're going to make a choice to have the same old situation, another de Blasio type situation, or a change. I want to change the city in a way that hasn't been changed before. I want people to have choices, people to be able to run their business freely and fairly without the government's interference. I want people to be able to pursue their dreams. I want education to be a choice and free to make the kinds of decisions that you and your mom and dad and parents want to when it comes to your educational systems. I want true affordable housing that's sustainable. I want to permanently end homelessness by creating permanent housing, restructure professional licensing, and reform zoning. So November 2nd, vote for Stacey Prussman on the F line on your ballot. Thank you so much.
Thank
Yours
you,
in liberty.
Stacey.
Thank you.
Okay, Cathy Rojas?
Thank you all so much for having me today. I think it is time that New York have a New York working class person represent them. And by that I mean not someone that was a working class person once upon a time, but someone that continues to put the interests of working people at the forefront. If you look at who has been funding our campaign, who has been helping us, who are our volunteers, it is working class families, the victims of police brutality, because they believe in a city where the rich are taxed because we create all the wealth. They believe in reallocating $6 billion from the NYPD and using them for violence intervention programs that will give our communities the services that they need, like home ownership, like job readiness, like mental health workshops, like conflict resolution, financial literacy, and much more. We need to help our small businesses, not just those that are already established, but also our street vendors, and completely decriminalize street vending for all. At the end of the day, we need to put education in the forefront. We need to ensure that education is fully funded, that schools are opened in a safe way, that we are putting in the forefront an anti-racist curriculum that really sheds light into the reality of our students' lives and the information that they need in order to empower and become leaders in their communities and leaders for liberation in the future. Thank you very much. On November 2nd, make an educated decision. Don't vote just because, you know, someone's from some type of party. Vote for who has the best interest and the best vision, the best plan, and the best platform for working class New Yorkers. Thank you.
Thank you, Cathy. And last but not least, Quanda Francis, please.
Yes, so I want to first again say thank you for having me. My name is Quanda Francis. I'm listed last, but certainly not least on the ballot. I'm ready to become the next mayor of New York City. And our city is in crisis. And it's time to elect agile thinkers to lead the government. And as an accountant, data scientist, and MBA, I've been trained for this moment as a native New Yorker. And we have one shot and we have a decision to make. And my goal is to build a New York City that works for everyone. Thank you.
I want to thank you all for taking the time to come and tell us your thoughts and what you would do if you became the next mayor of the city of New York. Thank you all and have a great evening. Mr. Josey?
Hello, my name is Ed Josey, president of the Staten Island branch of the NAACP. On behalf of the Coalition of Staten Island Black-led community-based organizations Candidate Forum Week, we thank our candidates for their participation tonight and their willingness to run for these important offices. Good luck to all of you. We thank our coalition partners and their respective members for listening to our program tonight. You are ensuring yourself of having a good knowledge of your issues when it comes to your November 2nd election. We also want to thank the technical team for their patience and experience in working with us tonight, October 12th, tomorrow, October 13th, and October 14th to hear the candidates. We will again use their services on Friday, October 15th, as we review the 5 proposals that will appear on the ballot. The forum for the week of October 12th will be edited into a 1-hour segment to be viewed from October 18th through October 22nd at 7 p.m. on Facebook Live or whatever social media you might have. In closing, we would like to thank you for attending, and please remember to vote because your vote does count. If you do not vote, you do not count. Until next session, good night.